Hello and welcome to InFocus with me, Curtis Hinton, on quewsnews. Today we'll be discussing an important decision by Sir Keir Starmer's government, one that has raised concerns about the UK's ongoing role in the conflict that's taking place in Ukraine and the potential risks that it involves. Earlier this week, the UK government confirmed that it would supply Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine. These advanced weapons have already been used to target Russia. While some argue that this is an essential step in supporting Ukraine, we must also consider the wider spread implications, especially as Russia is a nuclear power. This decision could affect the safety of the UK and the global security situation in ways that we just cannot ignore. Today, we'll examine the potential consequences of this decision and ask whether the risks are truly being weighed up. The UK's decision to send Storm Shadow missiles to Ukraine marks a significant escalation in our involvement in the conflict. These weapons are designed for long-range precision strikes, and their use on Russian territory raises important questions. Whilst the government's position is that it is part of the ongoing support for Ukraine, we must ask, are we fully aware of the potential consequences of this move? With Russia being a nuclear power, the risks of escalating tensions could have far-reaching effects, not only just for Ukraine, but for us here in the UK too. Public debate and transparency around decisions like these are vital. Whilst we may support Ukraine's right to defend itself, it's important to consider whether this is the right approach and whether full implications have been made clear to the public. This week, Russian President Vladimir Putin issued a stern warning to the West. In a video statement, he made it clear that Russia would not hesitate to use nuclear weapons if the situation escalated further. Putin said, "I'm not bluffing. It's a warning that can't be taken lightly, especially given the capabilities of nuclear power that Russia possesses." We get to hear from Putin thanks to our friends at RT. Let's hear what he had to say this week.
The Russian citizens and our friends around the world, as well as those who still nurture illusions that a strategic defeat can be inflicted against Russia, about events that are happening in the special military operation zone. I'm talking about what happened in the wake of long-range Western weapons being used in the special military operation zone. As a result of the escalation, the United States and their NATO allies said that they give their permission to use long-range weapons against targets inside Russia. Experts know fully well, and the Russian side has underscored this time and again, that using such weapons without the direct involvement of military operators from manufacturing countries is impossible. On November the 19th, 6 ATACMS missiles manufactured in the US were used, and on the 21st, a combined attack using Storm Shadow manufactured in the UK and missiles manufactured in the US were used to attack missile targets in the Bryansk and Kursk regions of the Russian Federation. This included the test of a novel intermediate-range Russian missile system. A ballistic missile with a non-nuclear hypersonic payload was used. The test was carried out successfully. The objectives of the launch have been met, are now considering and has successfully tested their capabilities to deploy advanced missile systems in different parts of the world. And their exercises routinely include the use of such weapons. Russia has unilaterally refused to deploy intermediate and small-range missiles until we see similar weapons deployed by the United States in a region of the world. The use of the novel system, which was essentially an operational test, was carried out in response to the decisions made by the United States and their allies. And the further actions will be considered and decided based on what we see from them. The further course of action will be determined based on the threats to the security of the Russian Federation. We believe that we have the right to use our weapons against military facilities and stoking a global conflict. We have always preferred, and we still prefer, to resolve our disagreements using peaceful means, but we are prepared for any scenario, and if anyone has any doubts, they shouldn't. There will always be a response.
Or confirmation of an use of an intercontinental ballistic missile. Thank you, courtesy of RT, that video. So with Putin's words in mind, we must reconsider nuclear escalation, what it would truly mean. The use of nuclear weapons, even in a limited form, would have a catastrophic consequence for global security, with the UK and the US at the forefront of the risk. A nuclear conflict could destroy entire cities, leaving long-lasting radiation damage and cause a humanitarian crisis like no other, like anything we've seen or experienced in modern history. It's not just about military strategy, it's about the lives of ordinary people, both here and abroad. While the government may view this a necessary military step, it's vital that the public is made fully aware of the risks, and we must ask ourselves whether this is a risk worth taking. Sir Keir Starmer and his government have committed to sending these advanced weapons to Ukraine. However, we still do not have a clear answer about what the UK's long-term strategy is, other than to support Ukraine until the end. But what does this mean? How does it plan to migrate the risks of future and further escalation in this conflict? Why hasn't there been more open discussions about the potential nuclear risks? The British people deserve transparency on the issue, particularly when the safety is at stake. If decisions like these are truly in the best interests of the UK citizens, then it's essential for the government to explain fully how it plans to protect us from the consequences of a wider conflict. The UK's involvement in this conflict has been escalated significantly, and it is no longer just about providing support to Ukraine. It's about us, our security, and our future. The Storm Shadow missiles are just the latest step in a series of escalations, and this involvement grows. So too does the risk of our own national security. We are now in a situation where tensions could spill over into a much larger confrontation. Sir Keir Starmer's government must provide a clear and detailed explanation about how they are planning to protect the UK security, not just in the immediate term, but in the years to come. The risks of nuclear escalation are real, and we need to understand the government's strategy for mitigating them. At this stage, the British public deserves answers. We need transparency and accountability from the leaders, especially when decisions of this magnitude are being made. Sir Keir Starmer's government needs to explain why they believe this escalation was necessary and their plans they have in place to protect the UK if the situation continues to worsen. It's crucial that we have an open dialogue about the potential consequences and are not kept in the dark about the risks that we are facing as citizens of the United Kingdom. A nuclear conflict between the West and Russia would have far-reaching consequences for both the UK and the US. If nuclear weapons are deployed, the results would be catastrophic, not just for the countries directly involved, but for the entire world at large. The UK could face devastating losses, with cities destroyed, lives lost, and radiation that would make large parts of the country uninhabitable for generations to come. Similarly, the US would experience significant fallout with widespread destruction and a global economic collapse. The human cost would be immense, and the environmental effects would have long lasted after the conflict has ended. However, it's not too late. We can prevent this. We must remember diplomacy remains the most powerful tool that we have in de-escalating the situation. There is still an opportunity to pursue peaceful solutions, to negotiate and to talk rather than resorting to war. The risks are high, but they are not insurmountable. We can still hope for a peaceful resolution and work towards a safer future for everybody involved. The UK's involvement in Ukraine is becoming increasingly complex and risky. The decision to send Storm Shadow missiles raises questions about our future role in this conflict and the potential consequences for our security. While the support in Ukraine is important, we must ask whether this escalation is in the best interests of the UK and its people. I believe we deserve answers from our government, and we must be vigilant in ensuring that our leaders are fully transparent in the risks that are involved. The situation seems dire, but there is always hope for de-escalation and dialogue. We cannot allow the spectre of a nuclear conflict to become our reality. Diplomacy and peace must remain our guiding principles. Thank you for joining me. This has been In Focus with me, Curtis Hinton. We continue to follow this situation closely and will keep you informed. Stay safe, stay hopeful, and good night.